Hey, Nani Nani. Sigh No More, Women Sigh No More, may have been written by Shakespeare, but it certainly was echoed by Margaret Fuller, who was born 200 years ago today. She was a person so remarkable that Edgar Allan Poe said, "Humanity is divided into men, women, and Margaret Fuller." Now, Poe's witticism was not meant kindly, but it actually was a compliment. Without a doubt, Margaret Fuller stood first among women in the 19th century. It is surprising. She could be considered America's first liberated female. In 1839, a woman could not vote. The woman was very restricted in her ability to own property. Few schools would educate them. What type of woman would be audacious enough to teach classes for women? What woman would be audacious enough to walk up to the Harvard Library and say, "I need access to this library to learn"? She was the first woman allowed to use the Harvard Library. And she used that knowledge to hold conversations or educational salons for women, which she held at Elizabeth Peabody's Boston bookshelf, attended from 1839 to 1844 by 200 prominent, mostly Unitarian women, including the Peabody sisters, Julia Ward Howe, who wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and Lydia Emerson, the wife of our patron saint, Ralph Waldo. And she said the conversations were a vindication of women's right to think. And Fuller was able to make a reasonable living, charging $20 for the series, which was half the tuition of a Harvard class. Margaret Fuller saw a world where women's minds were going to waste. She did not sit like a damsel in distress and wait for someone to rescue her and her sisters. She did something about it. She went to Heart of Learning in America. She joined a transcendentalist circle led by Emerson and other Harvard graduates, and she held her own with these men and prompted them, always trying to encourage Emerson to get out of his ivory tower. And he begrudgingly respected her and made her editor of the Dial, the magazine of transcendentalism in America. Fuller wrote that she was determined to help women answer the questions, what were they born to do, and how shall we do it, which so few ever propose to themselves till their best years are gone by. In 1843, she went off on a long journey to the Great Lakes, and she observed the relations between men and women in Indian culture and wrote, "I have witnessed scenes of conjugal and parental love in the Indian's wigwam from which I have often thought that educated white man, proud of his superior education, might learn a useful lesson." And she expanded upon what she merely hinted at in that book when she published in 1844, Women in the 19th Century. That reading that you read earlier, that progressive thing about a new manifestation that's at hand that has not yet happened, was written in 1844. She was a woman ahead of her time. She wrote, "There exists in the minds of men a tone of feeling towards women as towards slaves. We would have every arbitrary barrier thrown down. We would have every path laid open to woman as freely as to man." And she thought that if these social barriers were removed, men and women would be able to find their true selves. Male and female represent two sides of the great radical dualism. But in fact, They are perpetually passing into one another. Fluid hardens to solid, solid rushes to fluid. There is no wholly masculine man, no purely feminine woman. History jeers at the attempts of physiologists to bind great original laws by the forms which flow from them. They make a rule, they say from observation what can and cannot be, in vain. Nature provides exceptions to every rule. She sends women to battle and sets Hercules spinning. She enables women to bear immense burdens of cold and frost, and she enables a man who feels maternal love to nourish his infant like a mother. What woman needs now is not as a woman to act or rule, but as a nature to grow, as an intellect to discern, as a soul to live freely and unimpeded. She talks about herself in this book and set herself up as a model. The position I early was enabled to take was one of self-reliance. And were all women as sure of their wants as I was, the results would be the same. But they are so overloaded with precepts and guardians who think nothing is so much to be dreaded for a woman as the originality of thought or character, that their minds are impeded with doubts till they lose their chance of fair, free proportions. The difficulty is to get them to the point from which they shall naturally develop self-respect and learn self-help. Margaret Fuller is being preached in Unitarian Universalist congregations across the nation today. There's an article in our current copy of The World, and you can find out lots about her online. She was clearly a woman ahead of her time. And here in Winston-Salem, this past month, we've been witnessing a resurgence of self-help among women. There have been several events held here at the fellowship in support of the Women's Fund, which was founded in 2005 by 5 women who came together to develop the vision for women's philanthropy in Winston-Salem. They were concerned that despite a strong connection between poverty, low self-esteem, inadequately health care, and domestic violence, and being female, gender-specific programs are seriously underfunded. The Women's Fund believes that you don't need to be rich to be a philanthropist. It doesn't matter how much you can give. Your contribution to the Women's Fund means you are part of a community helping women and girls reach their full potential. By pooling real resources and leveraging our money, we can all be philanthropists and agents of social change. The women of this fellowship have formed at least 3 teams of 10 women, and I hear we have about 42 that are part of these teams, and we're trying to add a few more to make a 4th complete team. And we also have individual members who are voting members of the Women's Fund. These people are living the vision that Margaret Fuller had a century and a half ago. Their grant funding is focused on women and girls. Currently, less than 7% of philanthropic dollars are directed to programs specifically supported to women and girls. So we have 53% of the population, 7% of the philanthropy. And women are disproportionately affected by issues such as poverty, lack of health care, pay inequity. And the grants that the Women's Fund seek to focus not just on charity, helping those who are in a disadvantaged position, but to address the root causes of problems, to impact their education and their self-esteem and give them skills to develop themselves. Now, some men may feel excluded from a philanthropical society run by women. I am here to tell you that they will accept a donation from you. But I, for one, am inspired by the fact that this group is about women doing it for themselves. Rather than being damsels in distress, waiting for patriarchal morsels to drop from on high. These women are literally taking their fortunes into their own hands and striving to make a better world. Fuller believed that we had it within ourselves to change the world, for we're all connected to the eternal. If we get in touch with our true essence, we can be what the world needs. This is revealed in her poem, The One and All, which includes these lines. In somewhat Victorian language, so I'll try to read it slow, so it takes a while to process and translate from 19th century English to 21st century American. There are ones who separate the eternal light in forms of man and woman, day and night. They cannot bear that God be essence quite. Existence is a deep verity. Without the dual, where is unity? And the I am, in quotes, cannot forbear to be. But from its primal nature forced to frame mysteries, destinies of various names, is forced to give that it is taught to claim. And dost thou seek to find the one in two? Only upon the old can build the new. The symbol which you seek is found in you. In honor of Margaret Fuller and respect for the Women's Fund, let us all reflect on our place in the world. Let us be alive to what is in the universe and what is in ourselves, and share it. And following along the theme of sharing, it is now time for our offertory. Please join